thanks to the UNA for hosting us here, and to the university for providing the space, and also to everyone in the audience. I'm very impressed. If you had a forum on Western Sahara in Washington, D.C. on a cold Saturday, you would not get such a large and energetic audience. So I'm very, very impressed with the engagement on this issue. Again, my name is Kate, and I'm an attorney at Partners for Human Rights at the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights. It was founded in 1968 by Robert Kennedy's family and friends as a living memorial to carry forth his legacy. So despite the fact that the Kennedy family is a very political name in the United States, it's a private, nonprofit, and non-political organization. We engage with strategic long-term partnerships with human rights defenders on the ground. So our connection to the issue in Western Sahara came about because in 2008 we have an annual prize, and in 2008 the prize was given to Aminatu Haidar. Let's see if I can. Okay, there I am with Aminatu. Aminatu is a Sahrawi human rights defender. She's the president of the Collective of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders, CODESA, in Western Sahara, and lives in Layun. Some have called her the Sahrawi Gandhi for her courageous hunger strikes against Moroccan oppression. In November of 1987, Aminatu was jailed by Moroccan authorities for participating in a peaceful demonstration. She spent 4 years in a secret prison. The entire time that she was in jail, she was tortured. She was blindfolded for the entirety of her duration in prison, and repeatedly beaten and tortured. She was also subjected to electric shocks while incarcerated. When she was finally released in 1991, Aminatu said she was like a ghost, a living dead, a young woman back from all kinds of hell that bears no name. In 2005, Aminatu was brutally beaten and injured by the police during a demonstration in Layun. She served 7 months in the infamous Black Prison, and there she had 37 other Sahrawis sustained a 32-day hunger strike to strike against the conditions in the prisons and demand investigations into allegations of torture. In 2009, Aminatu, returning to Western Sahara, put on her customs form the place she was returning to was Western Sahara, and she was forcibly extradited to the Canary Islands, where she engaged in another 32-day hunger strike to be able to return to her home in Western Sahara. So our partnership with, we've partnered closely with Aminatu and other human rights defenders to track, report, and decry human rights violations against the Sahrawi. In August of 2012, an RFK delegation was permitted to go to Layun, as well as the camps in Algeria, to evaluate firsthand the human rights situation. The delegation had meetings both in Layun and in Tindouf, as well as Casablanca, Rabat, and Algiers. Met with victims of human rights violations and abroad representatives, both from the Moroccan government and from Sahrawi victims. I think it's important to emphasize something that Mr. Lassen said, which is that human rights should not be used as a vehicle to further a political agenda. And as difficult as it is to separate the situation of human rights from the political situation in Western Sahara, it's very important. Human rights are universal. This is maybe a tiny bit where I have to disagree with the general. Everyone on the panel has to disagree with the general, right? So human rights are not relative. So human rights in Morocco and human rights in Western Sahara are not relative to what's happening in other countries. Human rights are universal and must be universally respected in every country of the world. While the RFK Center recognizes the political conflict has an impact and stirs up an emotional debate, as we have seen today, the RFK Center does not take sides regarding the final outcome of the situation. The RFK delegation, however, did observe that the conflict stalemate has serious impact on the rights of the Sahrawi population, both in Moroccan-controlled Western Sahara and in the refugee camps. The failure of the parties to enact a permanent solution to the future of Western Sahara does not not limit, I should repeat, does not limit the international responsibility of the current administration to abide by international norms and obligations to respect human rights for the people under their jurisdiction. Morocco has signed and ratified many human rights treaties, and the RFK Center issued a report, which you can find on our website, based on reports that we received, again, in person from people in the Western Sahara. We met with hundreds of people, and the information that they presented was on their lived experience, what they're experiencing in Layun, what they're experiencing in Dakhla, what they're experiencing in Samara, what they're experiencing in the camps. And the information presented was regarding cases of disappearances, torture, arbitrary detention, police brutality, threats, intimidation, and extrajudicial executions, all on the part of Moroccan authorities. The delegation also received complaints about the violation of human rights of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association. Those rights are integrally linked and are just as valuable as all the other human rights. Now, the Moroccan Constitution, as a result of, in part, the Arab Autumn and the Arab Spring, Morocco has revised its constitution and has instituted a National Human Rights Council that now criminalizes torture and arbitrary detention. However, what we observed in Western Sahara was the need for increased implementation of these reforms in Morocco. During the visit to Layun, our delegation observed 2 or more police or military vehicles stationed at almost every street corner. So a very heavy police and military presence in Layun. Most of the Sahrawi interviewed expressed concern about uniform and plainclothes military personnel posted on every corner, and that people who are perceived as not pro-Moroccan were specifically targeted in the streets for harassment. The RFK Center delegation itself was under surveillance by security officers throughout the duration of the delegation. So while we were permitted to visit Layun and observe, we were also being observed by the Moroccan authorities. There were the delegation received many testimonies of cases of police and state brutality by nonviolent demonstrators, and was able to photograph. As you can see, when the Kerry Kennedy's daughter, Mariah Kennedy, was taking a photo of something that was happening on the street, she was someone from the outside plainclothes security was trying to prevent her from recording what was happening. When we tried to report an incident, the attempt was to discredit it from what we had seen. The major concern for the RFK Center is near absolute impunity for human rights violations, despite the numerous denunciations received by the delegation. And the prosecutor for the first instance in Layun, in a meeting that we had, informed the delegation that over the past 5 years, only one state agent was successfully prosecuted for committing an act of torture, despite hundreds of reports to the contrary. So, in short, there was an incident that we observed, a uniformed police officer and several plainclothes officers attacking a demonstrator. This person then went to the hospital, and when we visited her in the hospital, the Moroccan authorities tried to prevent us from communicating directly with her. We visited with others who had physical manifestations of police brutality and torture, as well as firsthand accounts of what had taken place, as well as evidence of extrajudicial killings that had taken place in Layun. The delegation was also able to visit the refugee camps, and the visit to the refugee camps was only 2 full days, so it wasn't an exhaustive investigation into what is occurring, but I did want to note that there were concerns that we had with the men's detention facility and the inmates that that were detained in the camps were reporting incidents of being beaten by authorities within the camp, as well as insufficient food. And the recommendation of the RFK Center for Human Rights, among other international organizations, is that there needs to be an independent human rights monitoring mechanism, both in Western Sahara and the camps in Tindouf. So a little bit about, briefly about the most recent initiative that the United States put forward to have an independent human rights monitoring mechanism within MINURSO, the peacekeeping force in place in Western Sahara. The closest that, since 2008, the RFK Center has routinely met with officials in the US government to advocate for this implementation of this aspect of the MINURSO mandate. Because MINURSO, as several people have mentioned thus far, MINURSO is an anomaly within peacekeeping missions, particularly those established since 1978, that have no human rights, there is no human rights monitoring mechanism where that's not the case. If there's a human rights situation in the Congo or in Haiti or in Sudan, UN experts are dispatched to immediately establish an objective version of the events and to investigate what has occurred. That's not the case in Western Sahara, and MINURSO is not permitted, and it's not part of their mandate to monitor these violations. So a lot of what you'll hear is he said, she said, or one side saying things and another side saying the opposite version. There's no sizable or continuous independent monitoring mechanism, which is necessary irrespective of the resolution of the conflict. The current MINURSO mandate expires on April 30th of 2014, as it is yearly renewed. And what happened in 2013 was that the UN ambassador to, the US UN ambassador Susan Rice proposed in the draft resolution, which happens before the actual negotiations, that a human rights monitoring mechanism be part of the MINURSO mandate. So that was a very, in some ways, surprising success of, in part, lobbying that the RFK Center has done directly with the ambassador, and Aminatu Haidar herself spoke with Susan Rice and told a very compelling story of her experiences and what people are currently experiencing in LAU. This was opposed by Morocco, as they have continuously opposed any independent human rights monitoring mechanism, and also by various other parties, including France, who's part of the group of friends. And so the language was removed before it was voted on. This was in part also because Morocco's staunch opposition included the cancellation of a military exercise, which is called the African Lion. It's basically US troops and Moroccan troops have military exercise, including arms, and it's been taking place for 13 years. Morocco, as a reaction to the human rights monitoring mechanism being proposed in the draft language, canceled the military exercise. And so sort of extreme measures were taken to really oppose the human rights monitoring mechanism. As a suggestion, I was asked to give suggestions on what various countries can do. In the Western Sahara, the police state and the ongoing violence perpetuated against the civilians demonstrates that the reforms enacted by Morocco have not resulted in the enhanced protection of human rights, and that's the lived experience of many reports that we've received, as well as our in-person experience while visiting in Western Sahara and the camps. The people of Western Sahara must have access to an independent international mechanism to present individual complaints. Scandinavian countries, as well as others, need to support the peace process, but also the respect for human rights in the interim. And UN member states should support the inclusion of a permanent human rights monitoring and reporting mandate for MINURSO. MINURSO is currently in place and would be able to receive reports from people who had perceived that their rights were violated, and would be it would behoove countries who don't have an immediate stake or are not part of the group of friends to advocate for the support of ally countries with close ties to Morocco, including those mentioned: France, Spain, Russia, UK, etc. The international community and UN member states should insist that the Moroccan government take immediate steps to end harassment, violence, persecution and intimidation of the Sahrawi people in Western Sahara, as well as insist that the mandate cover, with the cooperation of the Algerian government, what is currently happening within the camps. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate Kelly. We will now open the